The whiskey sloshed against the sides of the dirty glass as Franklin Tanner slammed it down on the wooden bar, his bloodshot eyes glazed with cruel intention. "A fine drink for a fine woman," he announced to the crowded saloon, yanking Olivia Blackwell forward by her wrist. "Any takers?" "One shot of whiskey buys you this pretty little thing for the night." The saloon fell silent, as Olivia's face burned with humiliation, her destiny apparently worth nothing more than cheap liquor to the man who'd promised to be her protector in the unforgiving Wyoming Territory of 1876. Quinn Lancaster had just pushed through the swinging doors of the Rusty Nail Saloon, trail dust still clinging to his denim and leather, when he heard the grotesque offer. His hand instinctively moved to the worn handle of his Colt as he assessed the situation. The woman, slender, with auburn hair falling from what had once been a neat arrangement, stood with dignity despite the circumstances, her eyes flashing defiance even as tears threatened. "She ain't merchandise," Quinn said, his voice low but carrying across the now hushed room. His spurs clinked against the wooden floor as he approached the bar, reaching into his pocket. The coins made a satisfying clatter as he tossed them onto the counter, far more than the price of a single whiskey. "And she deserves better than the likes of you." Franklin sneered, releasing Olivia's wrist to grab for the money. Sold to the cowboy with the hero complex, Quinn's hand shot out, gripping Franklin's wrist before he could touch the coins. "I'm not buying her, I'm paying you to leave her be." His steel blue eyes narrowed dangerously. "And then you're going to walk out that door and never bother this lady again." "Or what?" Franklin challenged, alcohol giving him false courage. Quinn's grip tightened, and Franklin winced as the pressure increased on the small bones of his wrist. "Or we'll find out how well you can shoot with broken fingers." The saloon had gone deathly quiet. Even the piano player had stopped mid-tune. Olivia stood frozen, her gaze darting between the two men. "Fine," Franklin spat, jerking his hand away when Quinn released him. He snatched up the coins with a sullen expression. "She ain't worth the trouble anyway." He staggered toward the door, throwing one last venomous look over his shoulder before disappearing into the night. Quinn turned to Olivia, removing his hat in a gesture of respect. "My apologies for that, madam. No lady should be treated in such a manner." Olivia's chin lifted slightly, pride battling with gratitude. "Thank you, sir, but I don't need your charity or your protection." Her voice trembled despite her brave words. "It's not charity, madam, it's common decency." Quinn gestured to a quiet corner table. "Would you care to sit? You look like you could use a moment to collect yourself." Olivia hesitated, weighing her limited options. She had nowhere to go, no money, and night was falling in a town where she knew no one. With a slight nod, she allowed Quinn to guide her to the table. "I'm Quinn Lancaster," he said, pulling out a chair for her. "Olivia Blackwell," she replied, settling into the seat with as much dignity as she could muster. I don't know how to repay you." "No need," Quinn signaled to the bartender. "2 coffees, please, and some food for the lady if you've got any left." He turned back to Olivia. "If you don't mind me asking, how did you end up in such a predicament?" Olivia's hands twisted in her lap. "It's a long story." "I've got time," Quinn said, his voice gentle. "And it seems like you could use a friendly ear." Olivia studied him carefully. He wasn't like the other rough men in the saloon. His clothes were worn but clean, his face weathered by sun and wind rather than drink and dissolution. Most telling were his eyes, kind, despite the hardness that frontier life inevitably instilled in a man. "I came west with Franklin 3 months ago," she began, her voice low. "He was a friend of my late father's, promised to help me start a new life after Pa died. Said he had connections, could get me work as a schoolteacher." A bitter smile crossed her face. "There was no teaching position. He expected other things from me in return for his generosity." Quinn's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, allowing her to continue. "When I refused his advances, he grew cruel, started drinking more, threatening me. I've been trying to save enough to leave, but he takes whatever I earn." She looked up, meeting Quinn's gaze directly. "Tonight was the final humiliation, I suppose." The bartender arrived with their coffees and a plate of stew for Olivia. She hesitated before taking a small bite, realizing suddenly how hungry she was. "Where were you planning to go?" Quinn asked after she'd had a few mouthfuls. "Denver, perhaps, or back east if I could manage it." Olivia wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "I have an aunt in Boston who might take me in, though I'd prefer to make my own way." Quinn nodded thoughtfully. "I respect that. Independence means a lot out here." He took a sip of his coffee. "I've got a small ranch about a day's ride from town. It's nothing fancy, but I'm heading back tomorrow. There's a widow who lives nearby, Mrs. Carpenter. She might need help with her sewing business. Would give you a safe place to stay while you save for your journey." Olivia regarded him suspiciously. "Why would you help a stranger?" "My mother raised me to believe that character is revealed in how we treat those who can offer us nothing in return," Quinn said simply. "Besides, I know what it's like to be alone in a harsh world." Before Olivia could respond, the saloon doors burst open. Franklin had returned, this time with two rough-looking companions. His gaze locked on Olivia, then shifted to Quinn. "Thought you could make a fool of me, cowboy," Franklin snarled, his hand hovering near his pistol. Quinn stood slowly, positioning himself between Olivia and the threat. "You did that all on your own, Tanner. Go home and sleep it off." "Not without what's mine," Franklin insisted, his words slurring slightly. "I am not yours," Olivia said, rising to her feet. "I never was." Franklin's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful, that's enough," Quinn interrupted, his voice deadly calm. "The lady has made her choice. Walk away now and we can all forget this happened." The tension in the room was palpable as Franklin seemed to consider his options. Finally, with a muttered curse, he backed toward the door. "This ain't over, Lancaster. I'll remember your face." "And I'll remember yours," Quinn replied evenly, "which should worry you considerably more than it worries me." After Franklin and his companions had gone, Quinn turned back to Olivia. "I think it might be best if we left town tonight rather than waiting until morning. Tanner seems the type to nurse his wounded pride with more whiskey, and that rarely ends well." Olivia nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of the day's events. "I have few possessions, just a small bag at the boarding house where we were staying. Can you ride?" Quinn asked, finishing his coffee. "Yes, my father taught me, though it's been some time." "Good, we'll collect your things and be on our way. I have a second horse you can use." Quinn stood, leaving extra coins on the table. "Ready?" Olivia hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Yes, Mr. Lancaster, I believe I am." The cool night air was a welcome relief after the stuffiness of the saloon. Stars glittered overhead as Quinn led Olivia to where his horses were hitched. She noticed now that he had indeed come prepared with two mounts, a sturdy bay gelding that was clearly his primary horse and a smaller chestnut mare. "Wait here with the horses," Quinn instructed, handing her the reins. "I'll fetch your belongings. Which boarding house, Mrs.?" "Patterson's, 2 streets over, room 8. The bag is under the bed." Olivia bit her lip. "But what if Franklin is there?" "Then he and I will have a conversation he won't enjoy," Quinn replied grimly. "Lock the door behind me and don't open it for anyone but me. Understand?" Olivia nodded, suddenly aware of how completely she was trusting this stranger with her safety. Yet somehow she felt more secure with Quinn Lancaster than she had in months. True to his word, Quinn returned 20 minutes later with her small carpetbag. "No sign of Tanner, but Mrs. Patterson said he'd been making quite a scene about you earlier. Best we move quickly." They secured her bag to the saddle of the chestnut mare, and Quinn helped Olivia mount. She arranged her skirts as modestly as possible, grateful for the darkness that hid her discomfort at riding astride in a dress. "It's about 20 miles to my place," Quinn explained as they rode out of town. "We'll take it slow since we're traveling at night, but we should arrive by morning." Olivia glanced back at the dim lights of the town, a strange mixture of fear and hope churning within her. She was leaving behind months of misery, but riding into complete uncertainty with a man she'd just met. Yet something in her gut told her to trust Quinn Lancaster. The night was cool but not unpleasant as they rode. The The rhythmic sound of hoofbeats and the occasional call of a night bird the only interruptions to the silence. After an hour, Olivia found her courage to speak again. "Tell me about your ranch, Mr. Lancaster." Quinn's voice came warm through the darkness. "It's modest, about 100 acres with a small herd of cattle. I built the cabin myself 3 years ago. There's good water from a creek that runs through the property and enough pasture to hopefully expand someday. You live alone?" Olivia asked, then immediately regretted the personal nature of the question. Quinn didn't seem to mind. "Yes, madam. My parents died when I was 19. Fever took them both within days of each other. I worked as a ranch hand for years, saving every penny until I could buy my own land." "I'm sorry about your parents," Olivia said softly. "It's hard losing family." "That it is." Quinn was quiet for a moment. "And you mentioned your father passed. Is your mother?" "She died when I was 12, childbirth. The baby, my brother, didn't survive either." Olivia's throat tightened at the memory. "Pa never remarried. It was just the two of us until last winter when his heart gave out." "That's when Tanner came into the picture," Olivia nodded, though she knew Quinn couldn't see it clearly in the darkness. "Yes. He and Pa had served in the war together. When he offered to escort me west, it seemed like Providence. I had no other family except my aunt in Boston, whom I've never met. She's my mother's sister." They continued riding through the night, stopping occasionally to rest the horses and stretch their legs. Quinn shared his canteen and some jerky he had in his saddlebags. As they rode, Olivia found herself slowly relaxing in his company. "You mentioned Mrs. Carpenter needs help with sewing." She asked during one of their stops. "She does. Her eyesight isn't what it used to be, but she has steady work from folks in the area. She lost her husband last year, killed in a mining accident. She's been managing alone, but I know she'd welcome the help." Olivia considered this. "I'm quite skilled with a needle. My mother taught me before she passed, and I took in sewing back home to help make ends meet after Pa died." "Then it sounds like a fine arrangement for both of you," Quinn said, remounting his horse. "At least until you decide your next move." As dawn broke across the eastern sky, painting the landscape in soft pinks and golds, they crested a small rise. Below them stretched a valley, green with early summer grass. A creek wound its way through the center, and near its banks stood a modest cabin with a small barn and corral nearby. A thin wisp of smoke rose from the stone chimney. "Home," Quinn said simply, a note of pride in his voice. Olivia couldn't help but smile at the picturesque scene. After months of uncertainty and fear, the peaceful homestead before her seemed like something from a dream. "It's lovely," she said sincerely. Quinn glanced at her, something warm flickering in his eyes. "Thank you. It's not much, but it's mine." They rode down to the cabin where Quinn helped Olivia dismount. Her legs were stiff and sore from the long night of riding, and she stumbled slightly as her feet touched the ground. Quinn's strong hands steadied her, lingering perhaps a moment longer than necessary before he stepped back. "My ranch hand Emmett should have coffee going," Quinn said, leading the horses toward the barn. "He stays in the loft. Good man, though he doesn't talk much. Hope you don't mind simple fare for breakfast." "After last night, Mr. Lancaster, simple fare sounds like a feast," Olivia replied, smoothing her wrinkled dress and attempting to tidy her hair. Inside the cabin, Olivia was pleasantly surprised by the orderliness. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a sturdy table, several chairs, and a comfortable-looking armchair near the fireplace. A curtained doorway presumably led to a bedroom. Everything was clean and well-maintained if sparse. An older man with a weathered face and salt and pepper beard was indeed tending to a pot of coffee on the iron stove. He looked up as they entered, his eyebrows rising slightly at the sight of Olivia. "Emmett, this is Miss Olivia Blackwell," Quinn introduced. "She'll be staying with us briefly before moving on to Mrs. Carpenter's. Miss Blackwell, this is Emmett Walsh, the best ranch hand in the territory." Emmett nodded politely. "Madam, coffee's ready and I've got flapjacks cooking." "Thank you, Mr. Walsh. That sounds wonderful." Olivia accepted the mug of coffee he offered, warming her hands around it gratefully. Quinn explained their hasty departure from town while Emmett served breakfast. The older man listened without comment, though his expression darkened at the mention of Franklin Tanner. "I know of him," Emmett finally said. "Bad reputation, works as a hired gun sometimes, mean drunk." Quinn's face grew serious. "You think he might come looking for trouble?" Emmett shrugged. "Possible, pride's a powerful thing with men like that." Olivia's stomach clenched with anxiety. "I'm so sorry to bring this trouble to your door, Mr. Lancaster. Perhaps I should continue on to Denver after all." "Nonsense," Quinn said firmly. "Tanner's likely all bluster. Besides, few people know where my ranch is, and those who do wouldn't direct him here." He patted her hand reassuringly. "Eat your breakfast, Miss Blackwell. You're safe now." After breakfast, Quinn showed Olivia to the bedroom. "You can rest here. I need to check on the herd with Emmett, but we won't be far. Lock the door if it makes you feel safer." Olivia surveyed the simple but clean room with its neatly made bed. "This is your room. I couldn't possibly—" "I insist," Quinn interrupted gently. "I often sleep in the barn anyway when I'm working late. You need proper rest after our night journey." Too exhausted to argue further, Olivia thanked him. Once alone, she unpacked her meager possessions: 2 dresses besides the one she wore, undergarments, a hairbrush, a small book of poetry that had been her mother's, and a daguerreotype of her parents on their wedding day. The familiar items provided a small comfort in these strange surroundings. She washed her face and hands in the basin Quinn had provided, changed into her nightgown despite the morning hour, and slipped between the clean sheets. The pillow carried a faint scent of pine and leather. Quinn's scent, she realized with a strange flutter in her chest. Pushing the thought aside, she closed her eyes and was asleep within moments. When Olivia awoke, the angle of the sun streaming through the small window told her it was late afternoon. She dressed quickly in her cleanest dress and made an effort to arrange her hair neatly before emerging from the bedroom. The main room was empty, but the door was open, letting in a pleasant breeze. Olivia stepped outside to find Quinn at the water pump, washing up after his day's work. He'd removed his shirt in the warm afternoon sun, and Olivia couldn't help but notice the play of muscles across his back and shoulders as he moved. Heat rose to her cheeks, and she was about to retreat inside when he turned and spotted her. "Miss Blackwell," he said, quickly reaching for his shirt. "I hope you rested well." "Yes, thank you," she replied, averting her eyes as he buttoned his shirt. "I apologize for sleeping so long." "No need to apologize. It was a long night." Quinn pumped fresh water into a cup and offered it to her. "Thirsty?" Olivia accepted gratefully, the cool water refreshing after her long sleep. "Where is Mr. Walsh?" "Riding the north pasture. He'll be back for supper." Quinn leaned against the pump, studying her. "I was thinking we could ride over to Mrs. Carpenter's tomorrow, introduce you." "Unless you'd prefer another day of rest, tomorrow would be fine," Olivia said. She hesitated, then added, "Mr. Lancaster, I want to thank you properly for your kindness. Not many men would have done what you did last night." Quinn's expression sobered. "Any decent man would have." "There just aren't enough decent men in these parts." He straightened. "Would you like to see the rest of the ranch? Might help pass the time before supper." Olivia welcomed the distraction, and Quinn showed her around his modest property, the vegetable garden he maintained, the chicken coop that provided eggs, the corral where several horses grazed peacefully. His pride in what he'd built was evident in every word, every gesture. "It's impressive what you've accomplished on your own," Olivia remarked as they walked back toward the cabin. "Not entirely on my own," Quinn admitted. "Emmett's been with me for 2 years, and Mrs. Carpenter brings pies sometimes." He smiled, a warm expression that transformed his serious face. "But thank you, it's been hard work." "Do you ever get lonely?" The question slipped out before Olivia could stop it, and she immediately regretted its boldness. Quinn didn't seem offended. "Sometimes," he acknowledged, "but I keep busy, and I have good neighbors even if they're miles away." He glanced at her curiously. What about you? What were your plans before? Everything changed, Olivia sighed, kicking at a small stone in their path. I dreamed of teaching. I've always loved books, learning. Pa encouraged it, even when others thought it improper for a girl to be so educated. She smiled sadly. When Franklin mentioned a teaching position out west, it seemed perfect, a chance to be useful, independent. That dream doesn't have to die, Quinn said softly. Bitter Creek is growing. They're talking about building a proper schoolhouse by next year. Hope flickered briefly in Olivia's heart, but reality quickly dampened it. Perhaps, but for now, I need to focus on earning enough to secure my immediate future. That evening, the three of them shared a simple but satisfying supper. Olivia insisted on helping with the cooking, and Quinn seemed pleasantly surprised by the cornbread she managed to prepare with their limited ingredients. "Best cornbread I've had since my mother's," he declared, taking a second piece. Even the taciturn Emmett nodded in agreement, offering Olivia a rare smile. After supper, Emmett retired to the barn, leaving Quinn and Olivia alone. An awkward silence fell between them as Quinn stoked the fire against the evening chill. "Would you like me to read aloud?" Olivia suggested, noticing a small shelf of books near the fireplace. "My father always enjoyed it when I would read to him in the evenings." Quinn looked surprised but pleased. "I'd like that very much. Don't get much chance for reading after a long day." Olivia selected a well-worn copy of The Last of the Mohicans and began to read, her clear voice filling the cabin with Cooper's rich descriptions of the American wilderness. Quinn settled into his armchair, his eyes fixed on her face as she read, occasionally pausing to explain a particularly difficult passage or comment on the story. As the fire burned low, Olivia finally closed the book. "We should continue tomorrow if you'd like." "I would," Quinn said, his voice unusually soft. Their eyes met across the dimly lit room, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits. The moment was broken when Quinn stood abruptly. "I should let you get some rest. We'll leave for Mrs. Carpenter's mid-morning." He gathered some blankets from a trunk. "Good night, Miss Blackwell. Good night, Mr. Lancaster," Olivia replied, watching as he headed for the door. "And thank you again, for everything." Quinn paused, looking back at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You're welcome, Miss Blackwell. Sleep well." The next morning dawned clear and warm. Olivia woke early, determined to make herself useful. By the time Quinn and Emmett returned from their morning chores, she had breakfast prepared and the cabin tidied. "You didn't have to do all this," Quinn protested as he washed up for breakfast. "I wanted to," Olivia insisted. "It's the least I can do in return for your hospitality." After breakfast, Quinn saddled the horses while Olivia packed her few belongings. The prospect of meeting Mrs. Carpenter made her both nervous and excited. If the widow liked her and approved of her sewing skills, it would be the first step toward rebuilding her life. The ride to Mrs. Carpenter's took about an hour, during which Quinn pointed out landmarks and told stories about the area. His knowledge of the land and its history impressed Olivia, revealing a thoughtful intelligence beneath his quiet exterior. Mrs. Carpenter's homestead was smaller than Quinn's but meticulously maintained. A neat white fence surrounded a flourishing garden, and the small house was freshly whitewashed. As they approached, a woman emerged onto the porch, thin and straight-backed despite her age, with silver hair pulled into a tidy bun and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Quinn Lancaster, twice in 1 week. To what do I owe this pleasure?" she called, her voice strong despite her years. Quinn dismounted and helped Olivia down from her horse. "Mrs. Carpenter, I'd like you to meet Miss Olivia Blackwell. She's new to these parts and is looking for honest work." "I remembered you mentioning your eyes were troubling you with the fine stitching." Mrs. Carpenter approached, appraising Olivia frankly. "That's true enough. My hands are still steady, but these old eyes aren't what they used to be." She smiled suddenly, warmth replacing her initial reserve. "Come inside, both of you. I just made fresh lemonade." Inside the neat cottage, Mrs. Carpenter, who insisted Olivia call her Alina, asked direct but kind questions about Olivia's background and sewing experience. Quinn sat quietly, occasionally contributing to the conversation but mostly allowing the women to become acquainted. Finally, Alina nodded decisively. "Well, I could certainly use the help, and Quinn vouches for you, which means a great deal. I have a spare room you're welcome to use in exchange for your assistance with the sewing business. We can discuss wages once I've seen your work." Relief washed over Olivia. "Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. I promise you won't regret it, Alina, dear, and I'm sure I won't." The older woman's eyes twinkled. "Now, Quinn, make yourself useful and bring in Miss Blackwell's things while I show her the workroom." Quinn complied with good humor, carrying Olivia's carpet bag to the small but comfortable room that would be hers. Meanwhile, Alina showed Olivia her sewing room, which was well organized with fabrics, threads, and patterns. "I mostly make practical items: shirts, dresses, quilts. Nothing fancy like you might have seen back east, but solid work that people around here need and can afford," Alina explained. "Think you can handle that?" "Yes, certainly," Olivia assured her, admiring the neat stitching on a partially completed shirt. "My mother taught me both practical sewing and decorative work." "Good, we'll start tomorrow." Alina patted Olivia's hand. "Don't look so worried, dear, you're safe here." Those simple words nearly brought tears to Olivia's eyes. Safety had become such a rare commodity in her life that the promise of it felt almost too good to be true. When it came time for Quinn to leave, Olivia walked him to his horse. A strange reluctance had come over her, though she knew this had been the plan all along. "Thank you for everything, Mr. Lancaster," she said, unsure why her voice suddenly felt thick with emotion. Quinn adjusted his saddle, not quite meeting her eyes. "It was no trouble, Miss Blackwell. Alina is good people. You'll be well looked after here." Will I see you again?" Olivia asked, immediately embarrassed by how forward the question sounded. Now Quinn did look at her, something warm in his gaze. "I stop by to help Alina with repairs every couple of weeks. And she often joins me for Sunday dinner after church. You'd be welcome to come along." Relief flooded through Olivia. "I'd like that very much." Quinn mounted his horse, looking down at her with an expression that made her heart beat a little faster. "Take care of yourself, Miss Blackwell. I'll see you soon." As she watched him ride away, Olivia felt a curious mixture of sadness and hope. In just 2 days, Quinn Lancaster had become important to her in ways she couldn't quite explain. She only knew that the prospect of seeing him again brightened her outlook considerably. "He's a good man," Alina said, coming to stand beside her, "one of the best in these parts." "Yes," Olivia agreed softly, "I believe he is." The next few weeks passed in a pleasant routine. Olivia quickly proved her worth to Alina, taking on increasingly complex sewing projects as the older woman's confidence in her skills grew. The work was satisfying, and Alina was a kind employer who treated Olivia more like a daughter than a hired hand. True to his word, Quinn visited regularly, sometimes bringing fresh meat or vegetables from his garden. Each time, he and Olivia spent a little longer talking, their conversations ranging from books they had both read to their hopes for the future. Olivia found herself looking forward to his visits with increasing anticipation, her pulse quickening at the sight of him riding up to Alina's homestead. On Sundays, Olivia accompanied Alina to the small church in Bitter Creek, where she was gradually introduced to the community. Most welcomed her warmly, though she was careful about how much of her past she revealed. The story Quinn had suggested that she was a distant relative of Alina's come to help with the sewing business was accepted without question. It was after one such Sunday service, about a month after Olivia's arrival, that she first saw Franklin Tanner again. She was helping Alina into the wagon when she spotted him across the churchyard, talking to a group of men. He hadn't noticed her yet, but the sight of him sent a cold wave of fear through her body. Quinn, who had joined them for the service, immediately noticed her distress. "What is it?" he asked quietly, following her gaze. His expression hardened. "Tanner, what's he doing here?" Olivia whispered, instinctively moving closer to Quinn. I don't know, but it can't be good. Quinn helped Alina into the wagon, then assisted Olivia up beside her. I'll ride alongside you back to Alina's just to be safe. Fortunately, Tanner seemed occupied with his companions and didn't look their way as they departed. Still, the knowledge that he was in Bitter Creek cast a shadow over what had been a pleasant day. Back at Alina's, Quinn insisted on checking the property thoroughly before leaving. Lock your doors tonight, he advised. I doubt he knows you're here, but it's better to be cautious. Alina, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. Would someone care to explain what's going on? Quinn and Olivia exchanged glances. It's a long story, Olivia began hesitantly. I've got time, Alina said firmly, settling into her rocking chair. And I think I deserve to know if there's trouble coming to my doorstep. Reluctantly, Olivia shared the truth about Franklin Tanner and how she had come to meet Quinn. Alina listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly concerned. Why, that's monstrous, she declared when Olivia had finished. To think of treating anyone that way, let alone a young woman in your position. I'm sorry I didn't tell you the whole truth, Olivia said, eyes downcast. I was afraid you might not want someone with such complications in your home. Alina reached out to pat Olivia's hand. Nonsense, you're not responsible for that man's wickedness. And you've been nothing but a blessing to me since you arrived. She turned to Quinn. What do you think Tanner wants in Bitter Creek? Quinn's expression was grim. Nothing good, I'd wager. I'll ask around town, see what I can learn. Should I leave? Olivia asked quietly. I don't want to bring danger to either of you. Absolutely not, Alina said firmly. Running solves nothing, we'll face this together. Quinn nodded in agreement. Alina's right. Besides, we don't know that he's looking for you. Could be coincidence. But all three knew that coincidences were rare in territories as vast as Wyoming. The next day, Quinn returned with troubling news. Tanner's been asking about you in town, he told Olivia. Describing you to shopkeepers, the barber, anyone who'll listen. Says you're his ward who ran away, that he's concerned for your welfare. Olivia felt sick. No one believed him, did they? Some might have, Quinn admitted. He can be persuasive when he wants to be, and he was careful to seem genuinely worried, but he made a mistake asking at the general store. Mrs. Miller is Alina's cousin, and she knows you've been here working honestly. What should we do? Alina asked, her usual confidence somewhat diminished. Quinn's expression was resolute. For now, Olivia should stay out of town. I'll spread word among those we trust about the truth of the situation. Most folks around here mind their own business, but they don't take kindly to men who mistreat women. For the next week, Olivia remained at Alina's homestead, jumping at every sound and peering anxiously out the windows whenever a rider approached. Quinn visited daily, sometimes staying late into the evening to ensure their safety. It was during one of these evening visits, as they sat on Alina's porch watching the sunset, that Quinn finally voiced what had been on his mind. I've been thinking, he said slowly, there might be a way to solve this problem permanently. Olivia turned to him, curious. What do you mean? Quinn seemed uncharacteristically nervous, removing his hat and turning it in his hands. Tanner's claim is that you're his ward under his protection and authority, but if you had another protector legally recognized. Alina, who had been knitting nearby, suddenly smiled knowingly and excused herself to go inside, leaving them alone. Mr. Lancaster, Olivia said, her heart beginning to race. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? Quinn met her eyes directly now. I know we haven't known each other long, Miss Blackwell, and I wouldn't presume to impose on you if there were another way. But marriage would give you legal protection from Tanner. He couldn't claim any authority over a married woman. Olivia was speechless, her mind whirling with conflicting emotions. Quinn continued hurriedly. It would be a marriage of convenience, of course, I wouldn't expect. That is to say, you would have your own room, your own privacy. Nothing would be required of you except the legal formality. I see, Olivia said softly, a strange disappointment settling in her chest at his clarification. "You could continue working with Alina as much as you'd like," Quinn added. "Nothing would have to change except your legal status. And when enough time has passed and Tanner is no longer a threat if you wish to end the arrangement, I wouldn't stand in your way." Olivia studied his face in the fading light, trying to read his true feelings. "That's very practical of you, Mr. Lancaster." Quinn sighed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I'm making a mess of this. The truth is, Miss Blackwell, Olivia, I care for you, more than I should, perhaps, given how briefly we've known each other. But I would never use your vulnerable position to press my suit. This proposal is offered first and foremost for your protection." "And if I were not in need of protection," Olivia asked carefully, "would you still be proposing marriage?" A flush crept up Quinn's neck. "Not yet, perhaps. I would have courted you properly first. Given you time to know your own mind without the pressure of circumstances." He met her gaze directly. "But yes, I believe I would have come to the same destination eventually if you were willing." Olivia's heart fluttered at his honesty. In the weeks since he'd rescued her from Franklin's cruel bargain, she had come to admire Quinn deeply, his quiet strength, his integrity, his kindness. And yes, there were other feelings too, ones that made her blush when their hands accidentally touched or when she caught him looking at her with warmth in his eyes. "I don't know what to say," she admitted. "You don't have to answer now," Quinn assured her. "Think about it. Talk to Alina if you'd like a woman's counsel. I'll respect whatever decision you make." Later that night, Olivia sat with Alina in the older woman's sitting room, confiding her conflicted feelings. "He's a good man," Alina said, echoing her words from weeks before. "One of the few who would offer marriage for protection without expecting certain benefits in return." Olivia blushed at the implication. "I know he is, and I do care for him, but marriage is such a permanent solution to what might be a temporary problem." Alina's shrewd eyes studied Olivia's face. "Is it just fear of Tanner that's keeping you in Bitter Creek? If he were gone tomorrow, would you still be planning to move on to Denver or back east?" The question gave Olivia pause. When she had first arrived, continuing her journey had seemed the obvious choice. But now, having found meaningful work, friendship with Alina, and whatever this growing feeling for Quinn might be called, the thought of leaving brought an unexpected pang of regret. "I don't know," she admitted. "I've come to feel at home here in a way I haven't since my father died." "Then perhaps this isn't merely a practical arrangement," Alina suggested gently. "Perhaps it's an opportunity to build something lasting with a man who clearly adores you." "Adores me," Olivia repeated, startled. Alina chuckled. "My dear, I may be old, but my eyes work well enough to see how that man looks at you when he thinks no one is watching. He offered you a marriage of convenience because he's too honorable to use your situation to his advantage. But make no mistake, his feelings run much deeper than mere concern for your welfare." Olivia considered this, warmth spreading through her at the thought. Did Quinn truly care for her as more than just someone in need of his protection? And what of her own feelings? The flutter in her stomach when he was near, the way she found herself watching for him each day, the dreams that had begun to feature his face. "I think," she said slowly, "I may be falling in love with him." Alina smiled, patting Olivia's hand. "Then the question becomes much simpler, doesn't it?" The next morning, Olivia was helping Alina in the garden when they heard a horse approaching. Expecting Quinn, Olivia looked up with a smile that quickly faded when she saw Franklin Tanner riding toward the house. "Go inside," Alina ordered sharply. "Lock the door, I'll handle this." But Olivia stood her ground. "No, I'm tired of running, of hiding. He has no power over me unless I give it to him." Franklin reined in his horse, his unpleasant smile widening when he spotted Olivia. "There you are, my dear. I've been looking everywhere for you." His voice dripped with false concern. "I've been so worried since you disappeared." "I didn't disappear, Mr. Tanner, I left. There's a difference." Olivia's voice was steady despite her racing heart. Franklin's expression hardened. "Now, Olivia, is that any way to speak to your guardian after all I've done for you?" He dismounted, taking a step toward her. "It's time to come home now." "This is my home," Olivia stated firmly, "and you were never my guardian. Just a man who took advantage of my father's trust and my vulnerable position." Franklin's face darkened with anger. "You ungrateful little, I'd choose your next words very carefully, Tanner." Quinn's voice cut through the tension as he rode up, dismounting in one fluid motion to stand beside Olivia. "Miss Blackwell isn't going anywhere with you," Franklin sneered. "This doesn't concern you, Lancaster. The girl is my responsibility." "Actually," Quinn replied evenly, "she's not. Miss Blackwell is of legal age and free to make her own choices, and she's chosen to stay here." Franklin's hand moved toward his gun. "We'll see about that." Olivia stepped forward, her fear giving way to righteous anger. "Enough. I am not a possession to be fought over or bargained for. I am a person with my own will, my own choices." She turned to Quinn, her decision crystallizing in that moment of clarity. "And I choose to accept Mr. Lancaster's proposal of marriage." Quinn's eyes widened in surprise, then softened with unmistakable joy. Franklin, meanwhile, looked thunderstruck. "Marriage," he sputtered. "You can't be serious. This cowboy has nothing to offer you." "He has everything to offer me," Olivia replied calmly. "Respect, kindness, safety. All the things you promised but never delivered." Franklin's face contorted with rage. "I won't allow it." "It's not for you to allow or forbid," Quinn said, his voice steel beneath the calm surface. "Now I suggest you get back on your horse and ride away. Olivia has made her choice." For a tense moment, it seemed Franklin might draw his gun. But something in Quinn's steady gaze, or perhaps the rifle Olivia now held on the porch, made him reconsider. With a curse, he mounted his horse. "This isn't over," he warned, wheeling his mount around. "Yes, it is," Quinn replied firmly. "If you come near Miss Blackwell again, you'll answer to me. And to the law." They watched in silence as Franklin rode away, his rigid posture betraying his fury. Only when he was out of sight did Quinn turn to Olivia. "Did you mean what you said?" he asked quietly. "About accepting my proposal?" Olivia nodded, suddenly shy. "I did. Though I'd like to clarify something about this arrangement." Quinn's expression became guarded. "Of course, whatever conditions you—" "I don't want a marriage of convenience," Olivia interrupted softly. "If we're to be married, I want a true marriage. Not because of Tanner or protection or practicality, but because—" She took a deep breath. "Because I care for you, Quinn Lancaster, more than I thought possible in such a short time." The joy that transformed Quinn's face was answer enough, but his words confirmed it. "Olivia Blackwell, nothing would make me happier. I've been falling in love with you since the moment you stood up to Tanner in that saloon, dignity intact despite everything." Olivia cleared her throat pointedly from the porch. "Well, now that's settled, perhaps you two would like to continue this conversation inside. I believe we have a wedding to plan." 3 days later, Quinn and Olivia were married in a simple ceremony at the Bitter Creek Church. Olivia had worked tirelessly to help Olivia prepare, altering one of her better dresses into a suitable wedding gown and arranging for a small celebration afterward. The entire community turned out for the occasion, partly out of genuine affection for Quinn and curiosity about his bride, and partly because word of Franklin Tanner's confrontation had spread. The people of Bitter Creek were sending a clear message by their presence. Olivia was now one of them, under their collective protection. As Quinn slipped a simple gold band onto Olivia's finger, purchased from the assayer's office, with proceeds from his latest cattle sale, his hands trembled slightly. The emotion in his eyes as he recited his vows left no doubt about the sincerity of his feelings. "I, Quinn Lancaster, take you, Olivia Blackwell, to be my lawfully wedded wife. To have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part." Olivia's voice was clear and steady as she repeated the words, her heart full to bursting with unexpected happiness. Never could she have imagined, that terrible night in the Rusty Nail Saloon, that Franklin's cruel attempt to barter her for whiskey would lead to this moment joining her life to a man of true honor and kindness. After the ceremony, the community gathered at the church hall for a celebration. Women had brought food, men had contributed drink, and someone had even arranged for music. As Quinn led Olivia in their first dance as husband and wife, she marveled at how quickly life could change from despair to joy, from loneliness to belonging. "Happy, Mrs. Lancaster?" Quinn asked softly, his arm secure around her waist as they moved to the music. "Very," Olivia replied, savoring the new name. "Though I'm a bit nervous about what comes next." A flush crept up Quinn's neck, but his eyes remained steady on hers. "We'll take things as slowly as you need, Olivia." "I meant what I said. I won't expect anything you're not ready to give." Olivia reached up to touch his cheek gently. "Your consideration means the world to me, but I want us to be true partners in every sense. I just might need a little patience as we learn each other." Quinn's smile was tender as he pressed a light kiss to her forehead. "We have all the time in the world." Later that evening, as they rode back to Quinn's ranch, now their home together, Olivia felt a curious mixture of nervousness and anticipation. The future stretched before them, uncertain in many ways but secure in the most important one. They would face it together. Emmett had tactfully arranged to spend the night at a neighbor's, giving the newlyweds privacy for their first evening as husband and wife. Quinn helped Olivia down from her horse, then surprised her by sweeping her into his arms to carry her across the threshold. "Welcome home, Mrs. Lancaster," he said, setting her gently on her feet in the main room of the cabin. Olivia looked around, seeing the familiar space with new eyes. "Our home," she corrected softly. Quinn had clearly prepared for their return. The cabin was spotlessly clean, with fresh wildflowers on the table and new curtains at the windows. Alina's wedding gift, Olivia realized with a smile. The fireplace was laid ready to light against the evening chill, and the bedroom door stood slightly ajar, revealing glimpses of fresh linens on the bed. "Are you hungry?" Quinn asked, suddenly seeming unsure of himself. "I could make coffee, or there's some of Alina's cake left from the celebration." Olivia shook her head, charmed by his nervousness that matched her own. "No, thank you, but I would like to change out of this dress. It's lovely but not very comfortable for sitting." Quinn nodded quickly. "Of course, the bedroom is. Well, you know where it is. I'll just light the fire while you change." Alone in the bedroom, Olivia took a deep breath to steady her nerves. She changed from her wedding dress into the nightgown and robe Alina had helped her make simple but pretty, with delicate embroidery at the neck and sleeves. Her hands trembled slightly as she brushed out her hair, letting it fall loose around her shoulders. When she emerged, Quinn had lit the fire and was sitting in his armchair, still in his wedding clothes minus the jacket and tie. He stood immediately, his eyes widening at the sight of her. "You look beautiful," he said softly. "Thank you," Olivia replied, suddenly shy again. She gestured to his clothes. "Would you like to change as well? You must be uncomfortable in that stiff collar." Quinn nodded, disappearing into the bedroom. Olivia took his place in the armchair, watching the flames dance in the fireplace and trying to calm her racing heart. This was Quinn, her Quinn, now kind and honorable and patient. There was nothing to fear. When he returned, he had changed into a clean shirt and trousers, his hair damp as if he'd quickly washed his face and smoothed it back. He sat in the chair opposite hers, the firelight casting warm shadows across his features. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the significance of the day of their new status as husband and wife hanging in the air between them. "Would you like me to read?" Olivia offered, breaking the silence. "We never did finish The Last of the Mohicans." Quinn smiled, some of the tension easing from his shoulders. "I'd like that." As Olivia read, her voice growing more confident with each page, Quinn moved to sit closer, eventually settling on the floor near her chair. By the time she finished the chapter, his head was resting against her knee, her free hand absently stroking his hair. "Olivia," he said, looking up at her with such tenderness that her breath caught, "may I kiss you, Properly, I mean, not like the brief one at the ceremony. In answer, Olivia set the book aside and leaned down, meeting his lips with her own. The kiss was gentle at first, exploratory, but deepened as Quinn rose to his knees, his hands cradling her face with reverent care. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Quinn rested his forehead against hers, eyes closed as if savoring the moment. "I never thought I could feel this way," he confessed quietly. "When I built this place, I resigned myself to a solitary life. I never imagined I'd find someone to share it with, especially not someone like you." Olivia's heart swelled at his words. "And I never thought I'd find safety again, let alone happiness." She traced the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. "You've given me both, Quinn, and so much more." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I want to give you everything, Olivia, everything I have, everything I am." The sincerity in his voice, the devotion in his eyes, gave Olivia courage. Rising from the chair, she took his hands and drew him to his feet. Without words, she led him toward the bedroom, her decision clear in the steady gaze she offered him. That night, Quinn showed her with gentle hands and whispered endearments how beautiful true intimacy could be between a man and woman who respected and cherished each other. And Olivia discovered that the giving of herself freely, joyfully, to the man she had chosen was nothing like the submission Franklin had tried to force upon her. This was a gift exchanged, a promise fulfilled, the beginning of a deeper bond than legal vows alone could create. Afterward, lying in Quinn's arms as moonlight filtered through the bedroom window, Olivia felt a peace she had not known since before her father's death. Tomorrow there would be practical matters to address, moving her things from Aliner's, figuring out how to combine her sewing work with helping Quinn on the ranch, the inevitable adjustments of two independent people learning to share a life. But tonight, there was only this: the steady beat of Quinn's heart beneath her cheek, the gentle rhythm of his breathing, the security of his arms around her. From a woman bartered for whiskey to a wife cherished and respected. The transformation seemed almost too miraculous to believe. "What are you thinking?" Quinn asked softly, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. Olivia smiled against his chest. "That sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead us to the best if we're brave enough to keep going." Quinn tightened his arms around her. "I'm grateful every day that you were brave enough to trust me that night, and I promise you, Olivia Lancaster, I will spend the rest of my life ensuring you never regret that choice." "I know," she whispered, lifting her face to his for a tender kiss. "I know." 6 months later, Olivia stood on the porch of their cabin, watching as Quinn and Emmett worked with the cattle in the nearby corral. The autumn air was crisp, the mountains in the distance already capped with early snow. She pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders, one hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach. She hadn't told Quinn yet about the baby. She'd only been certain herself for a few days, after consulting with Aliner about her symptoms. But tonight, she would share the news that their family would be growing in the spring. The past months had been busy ones. Quinn had added a proper sewing room onto the cabin for Olivia, and she had continued taking in work from the growing community. Her reputation for fine stitching had spread, bringing customers from as far as the next county. Meanwhile, she had learned the rhythms of ranch life, discovering an unexpected aptitude for keeping the accounts and even helping with the gentler livestock. Franklin Tanner had left the territory shortly after their wedding, reportedly heading to Colorado after one too many confrontations with locals who had taken Quinn and Olivia's side in the dispute. The shadow of his threats had gradually faded from Olivia's mind, replaced by the bright reality of her new life. As if sensing her thoughts, Quinn looked up from his work and waved. Olivia waved back, her heart still skipping a beat at his smile even after months of marriage. He said something to Emmett, then headed toward the cabin, removing his gloves as he walked. "Everything all right?" he asked as he reached the porch, noticing her thoughtful expression. "Everything is perfect," Olivia assured him, reaching for his hand. "I was just thinking about how much has changed since the night we met." Quinn's expression softened as he drew her into his arms. "All for the better, I hope," Olivia nodded against his chest. "All for the better, though there's one more change coming that I think you'll want to know about." Quinn pulled back slightly to look at her face, curiosity in his eyes. "Oh, what's that?" Taking his hand, Olivia placed it gently over her stomach, watching as understanding dawned in his eyes. "We're going to have a baby," she said softly, "in the spring." The joy that transformed Quinn's face was answer enough, but he lifted her off her feet in a careful embrace, spinning her once before setting her gently back down. "A baby," he repeated, his voice thick with emotion. "Our baby." "Are you happy?" Olivia asked, though his reaction left little doubt. "Happy doesn't begin to describe it," Quinn said, cupping her face in his hands. "You've given me everything I never knew I wanted, Olivia Lancaster, a partnership, a home filled with love, and now a family of our own." As he kissed her there on the porch of their home, with the Wyoming wilderness stretching around them and the future bright with promise, Olivia reflected on the strange, winding path that had brought her here. From the depths of despair in that saloon to the heights of joy in Quinn's arms, it was a journey she would never have chosen, but one for which she was now profoundly grateful. The whiskey that Franklin had tried to trade her for had long since been consumed by whoever purchased it that night. But the coins Quinn had slammed on the bar, the hand he had offered in protection rather than possession, had purchased something far more valuable than either man could have imagined. A love that would last a lifetime, growing stronger with each passing day, each shared struggle, each small triumph in the life they were building together. And as Quinn led her back into their home, already talking excitedly about preparations for the baby, plans for expanding the cabin, names they might consider, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that she had found not just safety, not just respect, but the deepest kind of love, one born of choice and commitment, tested by adversity, and strengthened by shared dreams of the future. In the wild, untamed Wyoming Territory, where fortunes could change in an instant and life often hung by the slenderest thread, they had found in each other an unshakable foundation. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, the woman once offered for a drink of whiskey and the cowboy who had seen her true worth, not as a possession to be bartered, but as a partner to be cherished. And that, Olivia thought as she wrapped her arms around her husband's waist and rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, was worth more than all the gold in the West.